is Chad Buterbaugh. I'm the state folklorist with the Maryland State Arts Council. I will be giving a presentation and answering questions, content questions. Kiana Pennick is here, and she is available to all of you via the chat box function. It's a little after 4 o'clock, and we're going to get started with our webinar, Folklife Opportunities for Independent Artists. If that's what you came to hear about, you're in the right place. We have an hour scheduled for this talk. I will speak for maybe 30 minutes, and then there will be plenty of time for Q&A at the end. I'll also stop throughout the presentation to take any concerns or questions. So let's just go over our agenda for today. We're going to start off by giving some instructions on our webinar tool, Zoom. I will move into a broad definition of folklife for those of you who might be a little less familiar with the type of art and cultural expression that the Maryland Traditions Folklife program supports. And then we're going to talk about two of our granting programs that are direct grants to individual artists. The first one is the Folklife Apprenticeship. The second one is the Heritage Award. And we will close out the formal part of the presentation with an overview of the kind of consulting and technical assistance that I offer as one of our several program directors on staff at the Arts Council. And as I say, the last thing will be some question and answer. So just regarding Zoom, some of you, I saw some notes, were having some issues hearing. There is a little join audio icon on your Zoom toolbar. So I would encourage you to revisit that if you have not had success. And remember that Kiana is here with us on live chat, and she is available through the chat box function. So that's going to be the place where you're doing all of your communication during this webinar. So I hope your fingers are limber. And we'll do our best to sort out your technical needs. This will also be the place where you ask questions or ask for clarifications about anything that I present. So in the chat box, there's a little drop-down menu. If you're having technical issues, just use that drop-down menu to select private, and you can chat directly with Kiana, who will help you with tech needs. And then if you have a broad content question that you think everyone would benefit from seeing, you can ask using the public function of the chat box. So this webinar is being recorded, and if you miss out on anything today, if you have to step away, if you're distracted by technical issues and you can't quite follow along, you can see the recording of the webinar on our YouTube channel probably within the next 2 weeks or so. The reason for that time lag is that we're transcribing all of our webinars, and we're also adding closed caption just so that we can make sure that everybody is able to access as broadly as possible. So jumping right into what we do. Again, my name is Chad. My job title is State Folklorist. I support traditional arts and culture across the state of Maryland, and the program that I direct is called Maryland Traditions. There's been a state folklorist supporting folklife in the state of Maryland since 1974. I'm the 5th state folklorist, and for all those years, we have been supporting folklife. Our definition of folklife is right here. We support community-based living cultural traditions handed down by example or word of mouth. So these are the art forms that are really deeply embedded in cultural communities around the state, really around the world. And that are connected to those cultures' ways of expressing themselves, of knowing themselves, of making meaning for themselves. So actually, as I was just telling Kiana before the webinar started, folklife is one of those art forms where, you know, the exact form or genre of the art is definitely important to us, and we're interested in its aesthetic qualities, but we're just as deeply interested in the cultures that those art forms are connected to, and how they move through those cultures and where they come from and how they change over time. So for that reason, that deep interest in culture that we have, folklife can take many, many different forms. It's not restricted to just performance, but of course performance is a big part of it. Up here I have a picture of two individual artists. That's Phil Wiggins on the left, Junius Brookhouse on the right. Both are residents of Montgomery County. And in this photo, they are working on teaching Piedmont Blues harmonica. Phil is teaching to Junius. So folklife can be musical, is the point. All different forms of music from around the world, if they're in Maryland and they're part of traditional arts and culture, we support it. Folklife, of course, can also be material in nature. It can be comprising tangible goods. I don't want to say goods because that kind of reduces it to economic terms, but here, for example, we have a photo of Rico Newman from Prince George's County, and he was supported as an artist working in traditional Piscataway finger weaving several years back. And folklife can also be occupational in nature. Here in Maryland, we have a number of occupations that are connected to deeply rooted enculturated ways of making a living. First that comes to mind would be the watermen of the Chesapeake Bay. Here we have Captain Kermit Travers, who was supported through the Folklife program some years ago for the work that he does in harvesting oysters and crabs from the bay. And finally, folklife can be culinary in nature. Here in Maryland, in Southern Maryland in particular, we have the stuffed ham tradition, and that's a form of culinary art that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. It's been part of the Southern Maryland landscape for centuries, and the stuffed ham tradition and its makers have been honored through the Maryland Traditions program in the past. So the sky's the limit in a lot of ways. It's not expected that you would totally be able to wrap your head around folklife in just a few minutes of conversation. So we're always available to talk with you about your particular art form that you're interested in and see if it's a good fit for the Maryland Traditions program. So jumping right into one of our oldest granting programs in Maryland Traditions, the Folklife Apprenticeship. The Folklife Apprenticeship is a $5,000 award, and it supports folklife education. So the idea with the Folklife Apprenticeship is that a master artist gets together with a learner artist and teaches that person, just to ensure that cultural traditions are being passed forward. The grant is offered annually, and it is distinct from some of the apprenticeship training programs that you might have heard about through Maryland's Department of Labor. The Folklife Apprenticeship focuses specifically on living cultural traditions, as I was describing earlier. And here in this photo, we have an image of an apprenticeship, Folklife Apprenticeship team from last year, from the class of 2018 and 19. This is Oliver Trinidad Corona on the left, who was a learner artist, to the master Dario Corona on the right. And they were working in the Dominican barbering tradition from Dario's barbershop in East Baltimore. So Folklife Apprenticeships are offered, as I said, on an annual cycle. Applications open up every winter. Applications are evaluated in the spring through a panel of experts that are convened via a public application process. Folklife Apprenticeship funds go out in summer, and then the apprenticeship teams work on a summer to spring basis. So just to let you know, the Folklife Apprenticeship application is open now, and you can go to our website into the Maryland Traditions section and access the application as well as the guidelines. And in those guidelines, you'll see eligibility requirements for the Folklife Apprenticeships. The first one is that both the master and the learner artist have to be Maryland residents. And if you want to get into the finer details, they have to have been Maryland residents for at least 6 months. And something that's really important to us in the Maryland Traditions program is that those that we're funding through the Folklife Apprenticeship program have recognition within their own communities. So we like to stay away from the top-down approach of going in and saying, you know, who's the best barber in Baltimore's Dominican community. What we really want is in the Folklife Apprenticeship application for there to be some demonstration of the fact that, oh, in this case, Dario Corona is really recognized, his business is really successful, people from the Dominican and Latinx communities are often coming into a shop, you know, maybe they're writing letters of recommendation on his behalf to be included in the application. Maybe some awards have been received on the community level that we can use to verify that, you know, this is really an example of someone who's succeeding within their community. Last piece of the eligibility question is that Maryland Traditions broadly supports, through the Folklife Apprenticeship program and all of our programs, we support folklife in Maryland. That simply means that If your folklife tradition has been in the state for hundreds of years, that's great. You know, it's eligible for funding through Maryland Traditions. If your folklife tradition has been here for 5 years, that's also great. You're eligible for funding through Maryland Traditions. And the idea is there that we want to recognize that Maryland is a place, like all of the 50 states, there's a plurality of cultures here. And if people have just arrived, if communities and groups have just arrived through patterns of migration, in some cases through refugee communities or by other means, the idea is that those folks are bringing their traditions with them, and we want to be able to support them through our work at the State Arts Council. So another way of putting it, as my former coworker used to say, you know, just because you're not from Maryland, you're still in Maryland. And so you're eligible, therefore, to be working with the Folklife program. So I'll stop and take a breath. If anybody has any questions, again, just kind of connect with Kiana via the chat box. I don't see anything coming through, so we'll just move forward. So the purpose behind this program is basically just to highlight folklife. It's a really great, from our perspective, it's a really great storytelling tool because, you know, if you look at the broader granting portfolio of the State Arts Council, you know, we're giving grants out to museums and institutions. We're giving to other independent artists who maybe more practice in the fine arts, whether that is ballet or other forms of art. This is our chance to really highlight the story of folklife and to tell the story of the expressive culture that is important at the community level. So that is a piece of the purpose of the Folklife Apprenticeship. Another piece is that it's part of the Maryland Traditions program to document folk culture. And so every apprenticeship team who is funded through this program receives during the course of their granting period a visit from a professional photography team, as well as from our staff, including myself, to sit down and do an interview during which the apprenticeship team tells the story of the work that they've been doing together, excuse me, and also gets their pictures taken. So the photos are professional grade photos. This is one. You may have seen the tag at the beginning of the presentation. Edwin Remsburg Photographs is responsible for all of the images that you're seeing here. And then those images go out in our marketing materials just to sort of amplify the work that our Folklife grantees are doing. And the grantees themselves also have access to some of these photos so that they can use them in their own work. We don't want to, like in this case, fund the work that's happening in a barbershop and not give a little something back to allow them to, you know, say post on social media or use in their own advertising materials. And the final piece is that we just want to support entrepreneurship across the state. We recognize that folklife is deeply ingrained at the community level, but at the same time, in a lot of cases, people are making their living through folklife, whether it's something occupational like barbering, or, you know, something more musically oriented. There are plenty of touring musicians that are working in folklife, and we want to support their efforts through our grant making. So again, chime in anytime with questions through the chat box tool. Seeing none at the moment, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to our next granting program in Folklife, and that would be the Heritage Award. The Heritage Award is a $5,000 award that recognizes long-term achievement in folklife. It's kind of like a lifetime achievement award. We give a Heritage Award, we give Heritage Awards out annually in 3 categories. And the one that's germane to this presentation is person and people. So we also give awards in place and tradition. But the idea behind the Heritage Award is that we want to recognize that folklife is generational in nature. It has long-standing history behind it in a lot of cases. And so the Heritage Award is a way of kind of recognizing that. The Heritage Award is given via public nomination process. So it's different from a lot of our grants. Anyone can make a nomination for a Heritage Award. Those nominations open in winter. and they are evaluated in spring by a panel of experts. And then with the Heritage Awards, the winners are honored in a ceremony in the summer. We've been giving Heritage Awards out since 2007, annually. The ceremony has been hosted in Silver Spring. For several years now, it's been hosted on the campus of UMBC. And then for the last 2 years, the Heritage Awards events have been paired with our Maryland Arts Summit, which is an annual professional development opportunity for Maryland artists to come and meet some of the cultural workers who are supporting their work, and then also get to know a little bit about folk life through the Heritage Awards. So nominations are closed right now for Heritage Awards, but we do have a batch of nominations in that we are going to be evaluating very soon in preparation for our next ceremony, which will be in mid-June at UMBC. Eligibility is pretty broad for Heritage Awards. It just has to, these awards are reserved for people, places, and traditions that are based in Maryland. So the people that you're seeing in these photos are the Sensational Royal Lights. This is a gospel quartet group comprising 5 generations now of the Elliott family, who originally hail from Dorchester County, Maryland, on the Eastern Shore. But then there are members of the family now living in Anne Arundel County and Baltimore County. And here we see the youngest generation, Ryan Elliott, on the right, singing with his dad, Ty, to the left, and 2 of his, I think it's an uncle and a cousin, on the far left. At any rate, the Sensational Royal Lights were recognized in 2018 with a Heritage Award in the Person People category, just in recognition of their family history in gospel quartet music, which goes back to the 1920s, I want to say, is the earliest incarnation of this group, and they're still going strong. And you know, they actually don't really call what they do music or performance necessarily. They prefer to call it musical ministry. So they were a strong candidate for the Heritage Award, and their nomination was ultimately successful. So again, the purpose of the Heritage Award is just to recognize long-term achievement in folk life. This too is an award that is attached to our cultural documentation mission. We do send our photography team out to perform the same type of interview with all of our Heritage Award winners. And another piece of the Heritage Award is that it's an unrestricted grant. And what I mean by that is that there's no expectation of how the money will be spent. Because what we're really doing with this award is recognizing work already done. So in the case of the Sensational Royal Lights, I mean, goodness, we have 5 generations of musical ministry that we're recognizing, and we're saying, you know, great job, here's this relatively, I mean, it's not a huge grant, but it's $5,000, so it's something. Here's this money for you to maybe reinvest into your musical ministry, or, you know, maybe they want to save it or invest it in another way. There's really no restriction. That's just about, it's one of 2 programs, I think, at the State Arts Council that are unrestricted in this way. That's really the end of my Heritage Award presentation. Seeing no questions, I'm going to keep going. We're moving out of grant making now and into the next section of the presentation, consulting and technical assistance. So this is in many ways the first step that a lot of independent folklife artists take when it comes to getting to know Maryland traditions. You know, there's no expectation that you're going to fly right out of the gate and apply for a Folklife Apprenticeship or make a heritage nomination. Really what we want to do as program directors, and what I want to do as state folklorist, is get to know you a little bit, get to hear, I want to hear your questions, I want to know what your vision is for your own artistic career, get a sense of the tools that you currently have at your disposal. You know, maybe you have access to a lot of great, I don't know, a lot of great spaces where you like to perform your work, but you need help with networking. So there are a number of resources, to make a long story short, that are available through my part of the staff and throughout the staff to help you out. The biggest one is honestly just one-on-one support. So don't be shy is where this lands. If you have questions about Maryland traditions or the type of work that we do, call me directly. My contact info will be at the end of this presentation. You're also welcome to email, of course. And we can have a call, and you can just tell me about your work. And again, the ethos here is really that you lead the conversation. You know, you tell us what your needs are, and then we will come back as staff members just to let you know how we can support you. And if there is not a direct way that Maryland Traditions or the Arts Council can support you, odds are that we know somebody, that we could connect you with somebody who would be able to help you or who might provide a different sort of opportunity. Another piece is a site visit. You know, we are not playing zone defense against our desks 40 hours a week. The program directors at the State Arts Council are very interested in getting out into the field. We're very mindful and intentional of where we go around the state and where we're spending our time. So if there's a studio that you want us to visit, you know, to come visit you in your workspace, or to come meet you in your community, we're always very, very willing to do that. And on those site visits, you know, we might be focusing on kind of grant writing 101 and helping you get familiar with the grant writing process. If you're already a grant writer and you want to know how to craft a strong narrative that would match our mission at the State Arts Council, we can talk about that. If you just want to tell us about your work, if you just want to introduce us, especially in Maryland traditions, to a new form of folk life perhaps that we haven't supported before, we're always interested in learning and hearing your story. We even have a Maryland Folklife Archives actually at UMBC, so that if you want to have your interview, you know, if you want to do an interview with Folklife staff and tell your story and maybe do a little bit of performance for posterity, we can arrange something like that too. And of course, this is all public service, so it's free. These site visits can be set up at your discretion. The next piece are the regional folklife centers that exist around Maryland. Excuse me while I take a drink. The Maryland Traditions program supports folklife at an organizational level through the Maryland Folklife Network, which is a collection of 5 and soon 8 regional folklife centers around the state. So wherever you are living in the state, you are not too terribly far from a regional folklife center, which serves as a kind of a resource center for you if you have questions that might be better served on the local level, or if you're looking for new opportunities. Each one of these regional folklife centers is of a little bit different shape. You know, it's not one size fits all. And the idea behind that is that we want the decision makers at these regional folklife centers to really be serving their communities in the way that's best. So for example, out in Western Maryland, our regional folklife center is located at Frostburg State University, where the 2 big offerings are a folk arts marketplace and performance venue on Main Street. That space is called Mountain City Traditional Arts. It's a community gathering place. It's a place to shop, to get familiar with some of the folk art being produced in that part of the state. And then also at Frostburg State, there's an annual Appalachian Festival in September. So that's a way of kind of bringing everyone together for a big celebration of folk life. And it's different from what's happening, for example, in Southern Maryland at our regional folklife center located at St. Mary's College of Maryland. Right now, they're wrapping up some cultural documentation work of their own, where they sent undergraduate students out to collect oral histories from folk artists in the region. And right now they're in the midst of doing a needs assessment to find out what people want in the 3 counties of Southern Maryland in terms of folk life, with a vision for potentially doing a summer institute in which people would be invited on campus to perhaps learn how to participate in different folk traditions, make certain things, play certain types of music. So that's years down the road, but just to give you a sense of how each of these regional folklife centers is different. And of course, I would be the person probably on staff here to put you in touch with any of those people. And I just want to call out the fact that in the next 12 months, we're going to be adding 3 new regional folklife centers, one in the mid-Maryland region that encompasses Frederick, Howard, and Carroll counties. one on the Upper Eastern Shore, which is sort of like Talbot County all the way up to Cecil County, and then one in Baltimore City. We don't have any regional Folklife Center currently in Baltimore City. So we don't know who those centers are going to be yet. This will be decided via public application process for grant funds, but those are continuing relationships. So once those centers are established, regional folk artists in those regions will have access to them. Okay, seeing no questions, I will move on to some kind of basics, some procedural basics of how we do things at the State Arts Council. All of our applications, including the 2 programs that I've spoken about today, are completed in Smart Simple, which is an online grants management system. Smart Simple is accessible through our website, msac.org. The web address is at the bottom of each of the slides. And you can create an account today if you don't already have one. You can log in to see which opportunities are available to you. And you can, when you do log in and create an account for the first time, you will register either as an organization or as an individual artist, and there are a couple of other different roles you can select. And based on that, Smart Simple will auto-populate with the programs that you're eligible for. If that seems dizzying in any way, shape, or form, you can always reach out to any one of us on staff here for more information. Just a note on our, all of our grants are decided via panelist review. What that means is that we convene experts to review all grant applications and make their recommendations. Those panel recommendations then go to staff for review, as well as our Arts Council and Department of Commerce leadership to finalize and approve. So panelists are chosen via public selection process. And one of the best ways, I think, to get familiar with Maryland traditions and the rest of the Arts Council is to apply to be a panelist. At any given time, there is one or another of our granting programs that is open and accepting new panelists. So sign up for our marketing communications. You can sign up for that via our website. You can email, again, any one of us, and then you'll get alerts when there are new panelist applications open. In the Maryland Traditions program, we make an effort to compose our panelists of artists, of arts administrators, and in some cases of people who are familiar with network-based approaches to supporting the arts. So they might not have any folk life expertise, but they do understand what it takes to run a network. And of course, our Folk Life Network grants really benefit from that sort of expertise. And then finally, all of our grants are attached to final reports. Some of these are a little bit longer, like our grants to organizations require longer reports. Grants to independent artists are, final reports for grants to independent artists are usually relatively short, not a lot of onus there, but they are required. So that's an expectation that we have of all of the funding that we give out. So I am going to come to the end of my long monologue. I hope you have found these words useful or feel inspired to be in touch with I or one of my colleagues in the near future. But let's just take a moment now to take any immediate questions that you're having. Again, the chat box is available via your little toolbar, and we'll just give you a moment to type. In a former life, I was a teacher of undergraduate students, so you know I can wait a long time for questions.
Such a small group, possibly couldn't be.
It could be. All right, well, not seeing any questions. So we just want to extend our gratitude for your interest and your presence, and really looking forward to hearing back from you individually. Again, this recording will be available via our YouTube channel in the coming weeks. Take note of my contact information here. And of course, come back to our website at any time to acquire this contact information or contact info for any of the staff members here at the Arts Council. So yeah, really appreciate your interest in folklife and Maryland traditions. Again, I'm Chad Buterbaugh, I'm the state folklorist from Maryland. Kiana Pennick, executive assistant, has been our technical and question-taking director for this webinar.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate you. So best of luck and hope to hear from you soon. Bye.
Bye.